And I find it really strange that you compare, people compare
Fahima,
to Saudi Arabia.
I need to pick you.
They're not a democratic state.
I need to pick you up on that, Fahima, because the king is actually defender of the faith, and the country does have an established church, so it is legally Christian. It has been constitutionally Christian. Please just wait 1 second. I'm Emma Trimble, and this is GBN Originals. Now, this week we have seen in the news the Peacock pub in Gravesend causing a bit of an uproar amongst residents because there are plans to turn it into a mosque. And this is also coming at the same time as a pub in Leicester has been granted planning approval to be turned into a pub, despite the fact that there were almost 900 objections. So I'm delighted to say that today we are going to debate this issue with the landlord of the Three Colts in Buckhurst Hill. What lovely pub. If you're ever in the area in Essex, I do recommend going to visit it. So we're joined by Adam Brooks, and we're also joined by Fahima Mahomed, who is a broadcaster and commentator. Thank you so much to you both for joining me. Now, Adam, what do you think is the problem, if there is a problem, with turning a pub that isn't being used, that hasn't been sold to another landlord, into a mosque?
Look, I'm always going to champion pubs. I grew up in pubs. My family has run pubs for decades, and they are part of British culture, of British heritage and our history. Many things have been planned and come to fruition from being in pubs. They are popular with the working class, and over the last decades, if not centuries, this country has sort of been built and stabilised by the working class that like to go to a pub and unwind after hard work, and get away from the stresses of life. And we are losing so many pubs each week. At the moment, I believe it's about 50 or 60 a week we are losing. 2024 was just as bad as during the pandemic. Obviously, we were hit really hard during the pandemic, and then we came out of that into energy crisis and inflation, and pubs, the business model of many pubs is just not there anymore. High rents and whatever. And a lot of people now are not drinking as much. So it scares me that we are losing our identity as a country. And I believe, apart from sort of Ireland, there are no countries in the world that have cherished pubs like we do. They have nothing like it. And I think we need to protect it. And then you get the argument as well from them being mosques. Look, I respect everyone's religion and everyone's right to believe in what they want. And I would never, ever want to offend anyone with their religion. I would say the same about Catholics, Christians. And I'm an atheist. I'm not religious. So the thought that it would then become a religion that is a minority group in this country, it's sort of even more you're taking away from British culture as well. Now, the argument there from Gravesham, is it in Kent where this is, Emma? Gravesend, yeah. There's already Gravesend. There's already two mosques in that area. It seems, I don't know why they seems to want too many for a specific area, and I don't understand why that would be granted,
Fahima, pubs are so culturally important to Brits. Surely you can see why people would be upset to see it turned into a mosque when they would prefer to have it as a pub.
I completely understand the British culture and how important the pubs are, and it definitely is a reflection on the British culture. However, we do have to understand that there are changing societal norms right now, and the traditional pubs are ever evolving, like Adam mentioned, with regards to people are drinking less. And, these conversions are typically subject to standard planning procedures, including public consultations, even with some sort of demonstration against it from the community. But they're not just going to come out there just because, Muslims are now sort of taking control as a minority. There is assessments of the factors like parking, noise, community impact. And these proposals have been faced with objectives, but have been approved because they have demonstrated that there is community support for it, and they do adhere to planning regulations. Now, I understand that it's not just about, the changing societal sort of norms, but at the same time, there are sort of diverse communities that they have to represent. And in certain communities, it's not about having 1, 2, or 3 pubs at the end, or mosques, for example. It's because these communities practice, they actually fill up those spaces and they require more. So it's just really a reflection on the community itself. Now, would there be still an outrage and an uproar if it was that same building that's going to be turned into a temple or a synagogue? We need to answer that. Or even, some sort of like commercial, other sort of like, buildings. So again, I'd like to sort of understand, why is there such an outrage when it comes to it being a mosque? And even though the mosques give a high percentage from, their sort of like places of worship to the community with regards to charity and being part of community. If you enter any mosques outside being of that faith, they do contribute a lot to the actual community that they are surrounded with as well. We're just not looking at those kind of like, things that will happen to benefit their actual surroundings as well.
But Adam, the people in this area, so just with the example of this other pub in Leicester, there were 870 objections. 2,500 people signed a petition saying that they didn't want the pub to be turned into a mosque. It was significantly higher than the number of people who were actually in support of this planning permission going ahead. It looks as if the council is actually just not listening to the local people. So do you think that actually pubs should have some protected status, that they should have some kind of extra support? So, because they are public houses after all, they are providing almost a public service to their local communities. So even if maybe there are certain difficulties financially, especially, post lockdown, that kind of thing, do you think that there should be some kind of special status, also because there's such historical landmarks?
Well, there's certain things, I believe they're called community orders, which are stopping a lot of pubs becoming developments in certain areas. So if enough of the local community want to protect it, they can do. But again, going back to your point, if it was to become a synagogue, I would still be disappointed. I would still be sort of fighting back against this. At the end of the day, we are losing too many pubs. And again, I'm not religious, but we are a traditionally Christian country, and we have to sort of remain with our identity as well. Now, we can't just keep putting mosques in every other street. It sends the wrong message to the majority of this country, in my opinion. As I say, I respect everyone's religion. But if you go to countries like maybe Saudi Arabia, there is no churches at all. They will not allow one. If you go to places like the United Arab Emirates, there is a handful of churches. They keep it to a specific number. They don't allow it to keep growing and growing. And I think we do need to protect our national identity. We are British. We are majority Christian as well. And I do see that you're saying that the mosques get filled up. But again, we have things like, is it a call to prayer at like 4:30 in the morning sometimes? A lot of pubs are around houses. Now, I can see a lot of disruption possibly coming if there are crowds of people wanting to go and pray at 4:30 in the morning. You wouldn't allow a pub to stay open till 4:30 or open at 4:30 for that reason. So look, again, I respect religion, but I don't think any religion should have the right to disrupt people in their homes or in surrounding areas.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private internet access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private internet access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Fahima, Islam, it doesn't have the sort of distinction between public and private. Islam is a very public faith in many ways. Can you understand why people who come from a traditionally Christian background wouldn't necessarily be happy with seeing their local area, having all of these mosques spring up, particularly when, it might be that the pub, for whatever reason, hasn't become financially viable, but maybe they would like to go to the pub and they don't necessarily want to see their area culturally changing at such a rapid speed, which we've seen over the last 50 or so years?
Well, I don't think that's the fault of the minority groups, namely the Muslims. I think historically, yes, UK is history, Christian roots, but in reality, we are now very much a pluralistic and secular democracy. And the census have shown that it's not really a majority of population that identifies as Christian anymore. And that's what really makes a country Christian, is the identity and the sort of practice of many people. And the fact that, Britain, the UK, has majority English, sort of British people that do not identify with any religion. In fact, it's more like even Adam said to himself. But the thing is, and that really does show that, we are trying to cling on to this patriotism without actually understanding that the UK has changed. Even the king himself, before it used to be said that the UK was the defender of the faith. Now it's all faiths. So it's changing demographically, it's changing culturally, and even historically, it's only there, but it's never been legal. And I find it really strange that you compare, people compare to Saudi Arabia.
I need to pick you.
They're not a democratic state.
I need to pick you up on that, Fahima, because the king is actually defender of the faith, and the country does have an established church, so it is legally Christian. It has been constitutionally Christian. Please just wait 1 second. It has been constitutionally Christian for well over 900 years. So to suggest that actually we're just a secular democracy, I think that's one of the things that would get many people's backs up, that they would think you're misrepresenting the nature, the history and the constitution of this country when you suggest that it's just a secular democracy where all cultures are just some melting pot, as if the country doesn't actually have any real history or culture of its own.
I never said it didn't have history. I said legally, yes, but the UK retains some Christian elements. The Church of England is established by law. The King, of course, is its supreme governor, and 26 bishops sit in the House of Lords, but that's largely ceremonial. In practical terms, Britain functions as a secular democracy. Our laws are made by elected MPs from all faiths or no faith. Courts don't enforce religious doctrines like you mentioned in Saudi Arabia, Iran, or anywhere else. It is the Equality Act of 2010 that protects all religions equally. There is none above, not even the Christian faith. So when there is uproar, I don't understand that, because it's just in line with the actual law itself and the census that shows that there's less than 50% of people now that do actually identify as Christians. I wish there was more. I prefer it to be an actual faith-based. When I speak, it's not because I'm trying to enforce any one religion, especially my own. My own I'm a single mom, and my own 2 kids went to a Church of England school, but they didn't practice. It's more ceremonial. It is not law for any school to even now. It's changed where I grew up here from South Africa, coming here at secondary school, listening to the daily prayer in assembly. Now that's even taken away in most secular, normal schools, public schools. So it has changed, and it shouldn't be an uproar if even when there was the outrage when schools decided to take away certain worships, because it's just in line with the way in which the legal system is, and it's protected that way. So we're not denying that there isn't a Christian country, but in practice, it really isn't. It's unfortunate. It's just a normal economics. When there's demand, there's a supply, right? So there is no demand for it as much, unfortunately, and that's why it's diminishing. It's not like as if to say that we want it to go that way. It's just systematically going that way, unfortunately.
I would agree with you that I would like to see Christian prayers brought back in school. But Adam, even if it is less than 50%, even if Christianity is on the decline, although we've recently seen some statistics that suggest otherwise, that actually the faith might be growing, not just Anglicanism, but particularly Catholicism and Pentecostalism, even still, it is the majority faith in this country. There are still many, many more Christians than there are Muslims or any other faith. And even though you yourself would identify as an atheist, presumably, I would assume that you would still see yourself as being culturally Christian, that many of the values, many of the morals, the ethics, and just the way that you live your life is sort of infused with a Christianity. Do you think that many people who, like you, whether they're practicing Christians or not, will look at the way that the country has changed so rapidly, and they see churches and pubs becoming mosques, and they feel as if they didn't really consent to this level of change in their local areas, and feel that they actually are powerless to do anything about it because the councils just don't really seem to care?
Look, we did not give our governments, the last 2 governments, we did not give them the permission just to open the floodgates to anyone from around the world to come here. And we're seeing with these dinghies and on the back of the lorries, the majority of people that are coming across are from Muslim countries. Now, we are getting, tens of thousands of new people every year, and then their families will end up coming. The demographic of some local towns and cities is changing rapidly. And the fear of many people I speak to out in the community, customers or wherever, is that in a few years, we are going to be unrecognizable here. And many of the people are coming across from Muslim countries that practice more of a hard line of Islam as well. So that the worry out there is that things will be forced upon us or things will be taken away from us in this country. And recently we've seen the case where the guy burned the Quran, and we're having a discussion about blasphemy laws. Now, I was reading last night, there was some exchanges with some Muslim MPs and different MPs. At the end of the day, people should be free to speak or offend for any religion. And again, I will say that, I'm not religious. You should have the right to do that. And it's scaring people that there seems to be a 2-tier policing or a 2-tier justice here. People are scared maybe to go against maybe Muslims or Islam in case there is an uproar in this country. And that is the feeling out there. There's a fear. Even things like halal food. If you go to buy chicken now, most of chicken in this country is halal, yet the majority of people in this country are not Muslim. So people are seeing a creep, and it does worry. And if you're not religious as well, that can be a worry too.
Yeah, Fahima, Adam's referring to, I don't know if you've seen it, this tweet from one of the independent Muslim MPs, and maybe we can pop that up on the screen for everyone to see this debate that was going on between this MP and Rupert Lowe. Presumably, Fahima, you would recognise that if a group of people were to go to another country and rapidly change the culture of that country, that if it wasn't Britain or if it wasn't a Western nation, most people would see that as being a problem and would see the concerns of local people as being quite reasonable. Do you think that people in this country, non-Muslims, should be held to the standards of the religious sensitivities of other religious groups, particularly of Islam, which seems to be particularly sensitive over things like, you know, burning the Quran or criticizing the Prophet Muhammad. We've seen this MP now basically saying that people shouldn't have the freedom of speech to criticize Islam.
I think we have to be really careful with terminology here. At the end of the day, there is freedom of expression and speech, but of course there is a grey line and always consequences where it does go beyond where it comes to incitement, and that's when the law steps in to say that maybe it's hate and incitement, and that is against any sort of British law and even Christianity. And when we talk about immigration, that is so anti-Christian, which lots of, you know, popes as well as the Christian sort of priests have mentioned that they actually go against the actual political sort of rhetoric right now against that, because, you know, that's so anti-Christian to be not hospitable and not actually being sort of like caring towards it. And when you talk about Muslims, they are here, majority of us in our sort of like, you know, hundreds of thousands alone in London that actually do conform with the law of the land. We do have a different way of seeing our faith. I myself am not from the Pakistani background. They're completely different culture to myself and what I practice. You will find difference in Arabs, in Indonesians, in Africans, in, you know, Pakistanis from the South Asian background. So, you know, we can't just put everyone under one sort of brush and stroke, even though we do see there is a majority of Pakistanis that are and from the South Asian background in the UK, but they don't represent everyone. And even amongst them in the community itself, they do not go against the law of the land, because that is against my faith to begin with, to be against the law of the land that we reside in. Yes, if you go to another country and they are actually imposing their other sort of faiths compared to the ones that's there, but then their laws are in parliament with regards to it being part of, you know, conformity. That's the thing. We're not like that here. It is about the diversity, even if you don't like that diversity being of one sort of faith that is more practicing than another, or it's shown to be. Or I feel that the Jews practice just as much, or, you know, with their kosher food, with their councils, and so similar to the Muslims. It's just that it's only being highlighted when they are Muslims that are practicing and doing the same things, but it's just the fact that it's always been highlighted and a spotlight on that particular minority, when actually all of that is exactly the same, if not more, in other faiths as well. So we also need to address that. We're not here to take over, have Sharia law or anything like that. We don't have even the numbers. And even if we did, that's not part of the Islamic faith to go and do that. If anyone does that, I'm the one kind of Muslim that even calls out my own community and not liked for that either.
Fahima, that might be true of your beliefs, but there are certainly people who do want to see Britain become an Islamic country.
The law of the land. And I don't think that will ever happen. Blasphemy laws or any sort of Muslim trying to take over.
You say that, Fahima. But Adam, I mean, we've seen, haven't we, in Parliament, there have been MPs who have been, one MP explicitly calling for the return of blasphemy laws. And it's one thing to say this, but the reality is that actually...
Well, they actually said they want to call blasphemy laws back. No, they're in line with either public order or sort of like, you know, other laws.
Maybe we'll be able to find that clip and pop that clip up on the screen, Emma, so that people can see it. But I want to just put this to you, Adam, because I think it's really important that, you know, we have seen the teacher in Batley who is still in hiding because he showed a picture of the Prophet Muhammad to his class. Those people who feel, you know, the pressure of not being able to necessarily speak their mind, not being able to necessarily even express themselves artistically. Look at Salman Rushdie. You know, people feel as if they are being asked to live their lives according to the restrictions of Islamic blasphemy law, don't they, Adam?
Again, I can just go back to the fear of people out there. I've got some very, very close Muslim friends, and one says to me, Adam, come into the country now, both legally and illegally, have a different viewpoint on the Quran. They interpret it differently to what he does. And I mean, you know, he's very dedicated to his faith. He's a lovely, lovely guy. And he says to me, Adam, sometimes there are people that have come to this country that will use centuries old interpretations to act the wrong way in life. And they will use that as an excuse here. And he says to me, you know, him and his friends will always call that out. But I think we have got a problem with people that are coming from countries where they interpret the Quran as if it was thousands of years ago. And that maybe be a problem in this country.
Final word to Fahima?
Well, again, I think there's extremism everywhere, not just in Islam. And for me personally, I don't think extremism actually coincides with any faith. And if that's hijacked by any particular faith, then again, it's always only highlighted in the Muslim side when it actually exists everywhere. And I think we need to be fair about what the law and legislation is, because at the end of the day, when even certain Muslims are calling for certain things, they also want to be treated and have certain rules that apply to, for example, that may be seen as anti-Semitic for a Jew. So why not it be, anti-hate if you don't like the word Islamophobia and it doesn't exist in your faith, but then also it should apply to us. So we just want the sort of fairness and the justice that's out there for everyone exactly the same. And I think that certain terminologies are sort of misconstrued and misrepresented as blasphemy, when actually I see it as just being, treated exactly the same as everyone else, not more, not less, just the same. And I think a lot of people and Muslims are quite reasonable to just ask for that and want that.
And as I say, a lot of my friends are Muslims, and I respect their religion as I respect everyone else's. It doesn't mean I will follow it or I will take any interest in it. And that is no disrespect. I have no interest in religion of any sort. Again, I think we just need to have a balance and protect British culture, especially going back to the pubs, not just from a selfish point of view for myself. It's part of my history, but we've got to remember we have got to keep the British identity, and pubs are that. There was a time when there was a pub on every corner in the East End. My family are from the East End of London. Now you'd be, to find a pub in the East End of London is a problem. So it's just people's fear that their view of Great Britain and what it is to be British is being eroded. And I think we need to be very careful that we don't just allow, if a mosque puts in, I think the Lake District as well, they're putting a big mosque as well. There's hardly any Muslim, there's hardly any Muslim communities up there. So you can see the worry of people as is to say, why is this happening? Why are we having this here when it doesn't serve a purpose for a large amount of people? So you can, and I think you must have to understand the worries. And when you see certain rhetoric out there and you see some of these Muslim hate preachers that pop up on our internet and they're calling for Sharia law and calling for Britain to become a Muslim state, it scares people. And I think there needs to be some sort of understanding there with when there's moves to have more and more mosques in certain areas, that plays to the fear of British people.
Yeah, it scares people. It scares me as
well.
Really
lack of understanding of what Muslim culture is, and I think it really is in line with Christianity, and there shouldn't be a fear. If anything, they don't have to be. If there's so many Muslims, there's a mosque, it's a problem. If there's not many Muslims and they want to cater for it, then it's a problem. I don't think that there should be a fear and there shouldn't be a problem. I think we should see that there are very much similarities within the cultures and religions, regardless of how the sort of minorities that are extreme that do call out. And I do have faith in the justice system. I work within it. And I do know that there's no two-tier kind of thing, because it happens in both sort of sectors where you can find people that are out there called, maybe we need stronger kind of laws, but I do have faith in the fact that this will remain the way it should be. I personally do have, family members who are Christian, married to English. My stepdad is English. So, at the end of the day, we are very much more diverse and inclusive, and also very much in line with values. If we were to concentrate more on that, then the few that are actually trying to cause that divide.
Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time. I think we could probably debate this for a lot longer. Thank you so much, Adam, Brooks and Fahima Mahomed, for joining me. And do let us know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with GBN Originals content. We'll see you next time.